I'm 76 years old, and I suppose you think you know what the end looks like. You see them on the news, or maybe in those movies where everything is loud and dramatic. But that's a lie. I know because I was there. For 40 years, I was the one holding the clipboard while the world stopped spinning for 1,000 different families. I've watched exactly 1,000 people take their very last breath. And let me tell you something that might upset you. Everything you think matters. Your house, your promotions, that fancy car in the driveway. None of it makes it into that final room. Not once. Lying in those beds, they didn't talk about their careers. They talked about the people they left behind. And the worst part is, I spent 4 decades fixing those broken bodies, checking their vitals, making sure their hearts kept beating. But I never actually heard what they were saying. I was too busy being a professional POTS, too busy being the essential one. I thought I was doing it right. I was wrong. I spent 40 years in the ICU, 40 years of 12-hour shifts, double shifts, holiday shifts. I was the one people called when everything was falling apart, the one who knew exactly what to do when a heart stopped, or when a family needed to hear the worst news in a soft voice. It's a powerful thing, feeling essential. You see, it feels like strength, but looking back, I realize it was just a very loud way of being busy, so I didn't have to be present. I was the perfect nurse. I never missed a day. I never missed a beat. But at home? Well, I suppose I was just a ghost who happened to pay half the mortgage. I'd come home at 7 in the morning, smelling like hospital soap and silence, and I'd sit across from my husband at the kitchen table, but I wasn't really there. My body was in the chair, but my soul was still back in room 402, worrying about a stranger's blood pressure while the man I'd married was right in front of me, trying to tell me about his day. And I'd nod. I'd say, "That's nice, dear," and I'd look at my watch, because I was too exhausted to actually care about the small things. I thought providing was the same thing as loving. I thought that because I was the good woman who paid the bills and kept a clean house and never walked away, that I was doing it right. But I wasn't a good wife. I was an adequate one. I was meeting the minimum requirements, nothing more. We became like roommates who happened to share a bed, polite, considerate, and fundamentally alone. It happened so slowly you don't even notice the erosion until the cliff is gone. One, "Not tonight, I'm tired," leads to 1,000 more. One, "We can do that later," becomes a decade of silence. I spent my best years on a hamster wheel, thinking the next shift or the next achievement would finally give me permission to be happy. But the goalposts just keep moving. I spent 40 years climbing a ladder, only to realize now that it was leaning against the wrong wall the entire time. Then, 7 years ago, the world finally caught up with me. It wasn't dramatic, no sirens, no big movie scene. Well, I suppose I thought I was invincible until I wasn't. I was just sitting in the break room, holding a lukewarm cup of tea, and my heart decided it had had enough of carrying everyone else's weight. The doctors called it a cardiac event. That's a fancy way of saying my body finally staged a mutiny against my choices. Suddenly, I wasn't the one in the white coat anymore. I was the one in the thin paper gown, staring at the ceiling tiles I'd spent 40 years counting for other people. And for the first time in my life, I had nothing to do but think. I remember looking in the small mirror over the hospital sink a few days later, and I didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked tired. She looked old. But mostly, she looked like a stranger who had been living my life while I was away at work. I realized I'd spent 60 years being someone's something. I was the head nurse, the reliable neighbor, the adequate wife. But who was I when the machine stopped humming? I sat on that thin mattress and I cried because I finally saw the truth. I had spent my entire life fighting for strangers' last breaths, while I was quietly suffocating my own marriage. I was so busy keeping the world's heart beating that I'd let my own life go cold. You see, it's a terrifying thing to realize at 69 that you've climbed a ladder for 40 years, only to find out it was leaning against the wrong wall the entire time, and you're too tired to climb back down and start over. It's funny. You think the big mistakes are what haunt you. You think it's the shouting or some grand betrayal, but it's not. What keeps me awake at 3 a.m. is the silence. It's the 1,000 small neglects that nobody ever talks about. You see, I was always so busy. I had my duty, my patience, my reputation, and I used those things as a shield and nafs. When my husband would ask to take those dancing lessons or a pottery class, I'd roll my eyes, just a little. I'd say, "Honey, I've been on my feet for 12 hours. I can't move another inch." And he'd just nod, and the light would go out in his eyes. Just a flicker, but it was there. And I didn't care, because I was right to be tired. I was a hero at the hospital, wasn't I? We wasted so much time being right instead of being close. That stuck like a burr in my soul. I remember the Scotland trip. He'd talk about the Highlands, walking through those old villages where his grandmother grew up. He mentioned it multiple times, and every time I'd dismiss it. Too expensive, not a good time. Maybe when we retire. We never went. And now we never would. I thought I was being the responsible one. I thought I was the anchor, but really, I was just an anchor dragging him down into my own exhaustion. You see, he didn't want me to go out of obligation. He wanted me to want to go with him. He wanted me to be excited about the things that made him feel alive. And I couldn't even give him that. We became polite roommates, you see, good at logistics, but fundamentally alone. I'd be sitting right there on the sofa, but I might as well have been on another planet. I was physically present, but emotionally I was light years away. I stopped asking him about his dreams because I thought I already knew the answers. And eventually, he stopped telling me. That's how it dies, not with a bang, but with a quiet resignation. One not tonight leads to 1,000. One maybe later becomes never. I remember looking at a photo of us from our honeymoon. God, he was so full of life, squinting in the sun, so hopeful. And then I looked at a photo from our 30th anniversary, and I saw the quiet sadness I'd put there. It wasn't through cruelty, it was through neglect. Benign neglect, that's what I call it now. It's the slow erosion of intimacy that happens when you stop being curious about the person you love. I thought love was about grand gestures, grand reliability, but love is built in the tiny, unremarkable moments. The conversations over breakfast, the walks for no reason, the way you actually listen. I thought showing up was enough, but that's a lie. Being adequate is an incredibly low bar. It's the bare minimum. Lying in those ICU beds, my patients never talked about their bank accounts. They talked about the trips they didn't take, the love they didn't express. And I'm sitting here now, 76 years old, with a comfortable pension and a very quiet house, and I'd give every cent of that money just to go back to one of those Tuesdays where he asked to dance, and to just say yes, to put down the clipboard and the pride, and to just be his wife again. Not the adequate one, but the one who was truly present. But time doesn't work that way, does it? Later never came. It never does. I'm not telling you this to make you sad, or to make you pity an old woman in a quiet house. No, I'm telling you this because you're still in the middle of it. You're exactly where I was 30 years ago. You're telling yourself that lie. You know the one. I'll do it later, when the kids are grown, when the mortgage is paid, when I finally get that promotion. Well, let me save you 4 decades of heartache with one simple truth. That day, it never comes. You see, the goalposts, they just keep moving. You get the raise and suddenly you need more. You get the house and then you need a bigger one. It's a hamster wheel, and you're running so fast you don't realize you're going nowhere. I want you to ask yourself a question, and I want you to be honest, even if it hurts. If you died tomorrow, would you be satisfied with the life you've lived? Not would your boss be impressed by your resume, not would your neighbors be jealous of your car, but would you be satisfied? If the answer is no, then why are you waiting? What are you doing with your time that's so important you're willing to gamble your one precious life on it? You think you're invincible. You think you have forever. You don't. I've seen the end 1,000 times, and it always arrives sooner than anyone expects. Stop waiting for permission to live your own life. Nobody is going to come along and say, okay, I'm 76 years old, and I've finally stopped counting other people's heartbeats. I'm just sitting here now in this quiet house, watching the dust dance in the light, and it's peaceful, I suppose. But I'd give every award, every essential badge, and every thank you card from a grateful patient just to go back to one of those ordinary Tuesdays, to put down the clipboard and the pride and the exhaustion and just look at him. Really look at him while he was still here. You see, I didn't understand that love is a verb. It's something you do, not something you just feel and tuck away for later. Don't wait for a diagnosis or a retirement party to start living intentionally. Don't wait for the silence to realize how beautiful the noise was. Call them. Take the trip. Tell them you love them until they're sick of hearing it, because I promise you later is a thief, and it's coming for your time too. The clock is ticking. It always has been. So, what are you going to do with yours? I'm 76, and I just hope you choose love now, while your life is still here. Goodbye. Take care.